Hey there, my name is AJ Pickett and I make videos about role-playing games and lots of them. I upload twice a week with a live stream every weekend. You can also find me on Subscribestar, Patreon and Discord, Facebook and Twitter. Also, there is an option to join the channel as a member and I welcome any questions you have in the comment section below. If you like this video or this channel or the fact we're heading into a new year, hit that like button if you'll be so kind. Today I have one of the weird D&D monsters for you. This one is a classic ambush predator which attempts to bait creatures closer to it by using an unusual type of lure that makes little sense until you realize that player characters are involved, in which case it makes perfect sense. This creature is a man-eater. It preys on the curiosity of humanoids and relies on its disruptive agility and furious attacks. Originally published in the Fiend folio in 1981, deriving its name from the Spanish word gamba for leg, the Gambado, which may be called the Leaping Death, are very strange creatures. Standing on average 6 feet tall at the shoulders, they have a muscular humanoid torso with 2 arms that end in 3 wickedly sharp curved black talons like those of an eagle. They have pale grey skin, some describe it as corpse-like, and their skin is slick and greasy. Their torso tapers down to a very weird 3-foot long single leg that is more like a spring made of cartilage and muscle, capable of being compressed and then releasing to provide a formidable 14-foot vertical jump and up to 12-foot horizontal springing leap from a crouched and motionless position. When they are mobile, they leap about using 3-foot-like toes, also with wicked claws, to provide 3 points where they can pivot on a dime and take off in different directions. So, despite having just one leg, they are very agile and quite fast, even though they really invest most of their ferocious power into the first attack they make, trying to take down their prey as quickly as possible. Gambado dig a hole just deep enough so that their shoulders and strange, flat neck are level with the top of where they crouch in it. On top of their shoulders, they secure a skull they have found, using these specialized muscles to grip the skull in such a way that it's not only very securely held to their neck, but can be manipulated and moved almost as if it was a part of their actual head, including making bite attacks with the jaws. This adaptation to using found skulls results in some interesting variations among the Gambados, depending on what large creatures live and die around them. The ultimate prize, of course, is the skull of a young dragon, but typically they will select the skull of a bull, a stag, even a monstrous humanoid race, Neanderthals, and rarely a non-monstrous humanoid skull. The natural curiosity of scavengers of all kinds makes this some easy prey for the Gambados, so they have a reasonably steady diet of jackals, big cats, primates, vultures and vermin of all kinds, but their favoured prey, of course, is adventurers, who, let's face it, with nothing else of interest in an encounter area, will immediately head over to investigate the skull the dungeon master has just described to them, because if it was worth describing, it's worth investigating. The Gambado is banking on this habit and is waiting, ready to fully exploit it as soon as any target moves adjacent to their location. Pow! Unlikely to be found in very cold climates, Gambado are more common in tropical locations, but a fair few are known to inhabit the vast grassy plains of the Shah. You can certainly find them in Chult. They tend to thrive in remote locations, as they can go without a meal for up to 4 months. They have a low intellect, thankfully. It's not much of a shock considering they don't seem to have much of a head. Their brain is located in their chest and their sensory organs sort of extrude out from their neck like a slug or snail, protected by the adorned skull like some sort of a hermit crab shell. They do move around outside their ambush holes during the daytime. They are diurnal, so they operate at daytime. They don't need to drink water often, but they can be spotted by a waterhole or river sometimes, in which case they have covered their body in as thick a layer of dirt and mud as they can manage to enhance their camouflage. The leg section of their body may have a dappled pattern that blends amazingly well into loose rocks and cracked parched mudflats or dried up waterholes, another prime hunting location for them. They don't often head underground unless they become trapped there or they were transported there deliberately and kept as some kind of a guard monster. As monsters go, they tend to attack with full fury, but if they end up taking a decent amount of damage in return, they will make a hasty retreat rather than fight to the death. They hunt to feed, not for sport, and they don't like getting injured, though if they do, they smear their own blood all over their body and may actually play dead. Another tactic to lure in scavengers and make a quick meal out of them. Along those same lines, they instinctually collect up the shiny metal and stone objects that some of their prey have on them. as having some of that scattered around has tended to bring in more of the tasty adventurer prey, though they have no idea what gold, silver, gems and such actually are, or what other value such things have other than being bait. One clue that the Gambado actually have a keen sense of sight and can see in full colour is that they tend to compulsively arrange the gems and coins they collect by their colour, going so far as to dig up a stash of bait bits, dust them off, arrange them in little patterns, and seeming to admire them quite a bit. This may just be anthropomorphizing these creatures, however, this could be part of their mating behaviour and be seen as nothing more than a status display. Scholars once believed these creatures lived largely solitary lives, and such behaviours were just weird individual quirks, as no communication between different Gambados has ever been recorded. But it was later discovered that Gambados would wait until a location proved viable for a lair before moving their whole family to live together. They are often seen lairing close to each other in groups as large as 8, witnessing an entire herd of cattle vanish overnight, and yet only seeing 1 or 2 of the Gambados made livestock ranchers spin some pretty tall tales about how bottomless their appetite and how relentless the murdering drives of the Gambados were. However, it seems this was a little far-fetched. The pits of the Gambados are usually loosely covered with bones, rags, rocks, and whatever sticks and leaves they can find, very much like one would create a concealed pit trap. There are a few signs it is a Gambado lair for those who have fallen victim to the attack. They will keep an eye out for such a location and be able to spot them a lot easier in future encounters, because it's not something you soon forget. Sometimes they wait for a creature to approach and then leap to attack. Other times the pit will be more well established and larger, and they will leap on top of prey that simply falls through the weak cover into the pit below. Most creatures heavier than a rat will tend to drop through the cover. Then the Gambado will rebuild the pit coverings anytime there's been a disturbance or a collapse. The communication between Gambados was missed originally, as nobody was paying attention to the rapid and deliberate movements of their springing legs and the drumming of their 3 toes on the ground, as it looks just like they are moving in order to keep their muscles ready to leap. But it turns out this is their form of primitive communication, with a glossary of about 6 different meanings. Nobody's quite sure how often they mate and how many offspring they produce. Nobody's ever located a nest with eggs or whatever means they use. And the few corpses of these creatures that have been brought back into towns in the hopes of turning a profit from them has yielded little more information regarding what their reproductive life is like. However, it turns out that the unusual physiology of their leg has some very useful, tough and flexible hide with properties, and their arteries can be used in the construction of things because the tubing of it is quite flexible. Outside the places I mentioned on the world of Toril, they are known to occasionally be found in the temperate plains and some underground areas of the Savage Coast. They tend to find the sheltered underground spots preferable to exposure to what is seasonably quite harsh and cold weather for them. They're not a migrating species. They have been encountered in Cormyr, the Dalelands, Sembia, and a few other locations such as the Duskwood around the Border Kingdoms and the Battle of Bones up near Anarok, and it's unknown if they originated in Faerun or the continent of Faerun, or if they're much more common in such places as the vast forest of Karashaka, far across the western trackless sea. You can find a pretty good stat block and write-up for the Gambado adjusted for 5th edition players. It was created by Hunter1828 and is hosted on the D&D Beyond website in their Homebrew Monsters section. And I have it right here. So they're a medium monstrosity, chaotic neutral. They've got a natural armor class of 15. 68 plus 6, so with an average of 33 hit points, speed of 30 feet, strength of 16, dexterity 14, constitution 12, intelligence just 6, wisdom of 10, and charisma of 6. They have damage resistance to bludgeoning, which is an interesting addition there. A tremor sense out to 120 feet, which I think is probably appropriate. Dark vision out to 60 feet is maybe not so, because they operate during the day, but they are burrowing creatures. Passive perception of 10. It says here that they speak a language of Terran. I would say probably just their own language. Challenge rating of 1. Startling leaps is their main power. The Gambado moves exclusively by hopping. Its movement each single turn is a single jump, being unaffected by difficult terrain, and the Gambado can move freely through spaces occupied by other creatures during its movement. Opportunity attacks triggered by the Gambado's movement are made with disadvantage. However, all of its movement must be in a straight line. The distance moved may vary, but once a vector is chosen, the Gambado may not alter its course. Does not have to conform to grid cells, designated an ending square, and considering tracing a straight line across the map Basically, they just go boing. The Gambado can ascend up to 15 feet during its movement. Camouflage, they have advantage on all stealth checks to hide. They have a melee attack with vicious claws. There's +5 to hit, reach of 5 feet, doing 2d4 plus 3 slashing damage, and they have a crash attack, +5 to hit. One target is hit with 1d12 plus 3 bludgeoning damage, and the target is knocked prone as the Gambado lands on top of them. This attack can only be made at the end of the Gambado's movement, of course, after it's moved at least 5 feet, so 1 space. They also have a reaction called Uncanny Leap, and the trigger is the Gambado is targeted by a damaging area effect spell. So the Gambado then leaps 30 feet. If it ends this movement outside of the area of the spell has no effect on the Gambado. So essentially it does a super dash leap out of harm's way. And that, my friends, is the Gambado. Please hit the like button if you made it this far. Subscribe if you like what I do. Check out my Subscribestar or Patreon for links for all the full scripts for these videos. Buy some Teespring merchandise. Wear your geek with pride, and as always, thanks for listening, and I'll be back very soon with more for you.